great. All right, so before we get into text, I want to really congratulate most of you. Your reading assignments are really good. Some of you are really actually understanding Maimonides, right? And actually going beyond Maimonides. So it's really impressive, right? That you guys are really getting this material without even a professor, right? You're just reading it. Maybe it's to Maimonides' credit, I don't know. But in any case, some of you are really doing good, and actually most of you. And there were some really good, actually, critiques of Maimonides, which are actually really nicely done. So I want to go over some of those questions some of you had, and then we'll get into the text for today. So first critique I get almost from everybody is that Maimonides is elitist, right? Meaning only a few people can study metaphysics, meaning theology, right? And what about the rest of us, right? What about the common mortal, right? Do they not have access to spirituality? Do they not have access to God? Like, what is this that only a small group of people can study metaphysics? Does anyone have an answer as to why he would do that? Yes, Epstein.
What he explains in his 5 rules why is that he doesn't, what he's really guarding against is close-minded people.
Good.
So what he doesn't want is someone to come into metaphysics with this very close mind in either denial or set in their ways. He wants someone flexible so he can work with, right? Because you can't work without metaphysics without flexibility. It's in its nature. Also, I think it's also the time period he came. A lot of the scholars of that time, the only highbrow elitists learned the higher end of the text and knowledge, and everybody else kind of worked with lower end text. So I think it's also a little bit of his time.
Excellent, excellent. I'll come back to that. I think, Barbara, you had your hand up. Was that you? No, who was it? He said it? Okay. Okay, very good, right? This is not that, not everybody has... what he wants to avoid, remember I told you, these were dangerous times. Ignorant people were reading the scripture, both in the Muslim and Jewish communities, and causing a lot of problems, right? People with very narrow minds would read the Quran or would read the Hebrew Bible and interpret it in a way, or not even interpret it, sadly, right? Just follow blindly what is being said there, and there was a lot of violence as a result. So he is keenly aware that if your mind is not broad enough, profound enough, flexible enough, human enough, right? If you're not sensitive, right, to human concerns, if this is not an issue for you, you can become actually a mass murderer in the name of God. This was the problem. Still the problem today, by the way. We still have people in the name of God in all 3 religions, killing. Right, so he was keenly aware of that. So it's not that not everybody has access, is that the ones who are there to teach, and ultimately he realizes that the Bible or the scripture is dangerous if it is put in the wrong hands, right? So that's the first contextual reason. Another reason, I think it was Amoroso. I forgot that story about the pearl diver, right? If you dive for a pearl and you haven't exercised your lungs, what's going to happen to you? Yeah.
You get the bends.
You what?
No, sorry. It will crush you.
Exactly, you'll die, right? Your lungs don't have the propensity for this type of exercise. So if you are very unlearned and your mind is not purified, you might die from this scripture. This scripture will make you do things. I mean, and we can see this so easily throughout history. Not only have people killed, but they have let themselves be killed in the name of scripture, right? So it's a danger for both the self and others, right, to go to these scriptures unprepared. The material is too powerful. The material is too heavy to get there with an unprepared mind, right? So I hope that answers, does that answer the question in general of why not everybody can do this, right? Of course, all of us, according to Maimonides, should do a little bit of this, right? In the Jewish tradition, you have, even here in Queens, you have houses of study that are open, and you can go, and a lot of my students actually go in the evening and they study there. So anyone actually should go and, learn more. But if you're going to be a figure of authority, you better be good in your mind, right? You can't, not just anybody can start teaching and interpreting the scriptures. But everyone is encouraged, right, according to Maimonides, to study. Go as far as you can. Yes, you have a day job, but in the evening you can go study a little bit, right? So everyone is encouraged to study, but not everyone is encouraged to teach, right? Or interpret, or, tell people what to do. That's the idea here, right? Okay, great. Let's see if I covered everything. Oh, yeah. There was some nice objection by Mahmoud, right? What? Temperament, livelihood are obstacles, right, to learning metaphysics. Why? Right? What if I have a different, well, only people who are cool and collected can learn metaphysics? People who are hot-blooded cannot learn metaphysics? Why? Right? So Mahmoud, this is Aristotelian. We'll talk about the ethics, but he's drawing from Aristotle. For Aristotle, a person who is hot-blooded, right, have a harder time controlling themselves than a person who is cold-blooded, right? You know, there's different, according to Aristotle, there's different personality types, right? There's the kind of cool and collected type, the very hot temperamental type, there's the windy type, watery type, right? This is the science of the time. Similar, by the way, to Chinese. Eastern philosophy also has these types, and so does Hindu thought. So for Aristotle, certain types have a harder time controlling themselves and therefore have a harder time with ethics. And we're going to see today why ethics is one of the prerequisites of learning scripture. We're going to talk about that. As far as livelihood, yes, you're right. Anybody should be able. But again, Mahmoud, if you have a whole day job and you're only studying a little bit in the evening, can you get to the level, right, that you need to? But obviously, it's encouraged to study at all levels. You are encouraged to study a little bit and get as far as you can, right, in the community that Maimonides was from. Okay, so we'll address the notion of morality, ethics as a prerequisite to studying metaphysics in the class, and I saw a lot of you ask questions about that, right? So we'll get to that. All right, so let's get in the text. I'm choking here. I can barely breathe. I'm having trouble breathing today. Okay, page 56 to 57. This is good, you know, like, you know, the people who win the races are from, a lot of them are from Kenya. And they actually, why they win the races? Anybody know why people from Kenya are always winning the races? Olympic races? Anybody know? It's not so much their body as something else. Nobody knows why these guys are always winning? They practice at an altitude, right? They have mountains there, and they actually go up and they practice it. Why? Because there's less oxygen, so you really train, right? So I'm doing the Kenyan runner thing. I'm practicing teaching with no oxygen, and when the COVID is over, I will be very powerful, probably. My voice will boom forth from this practice. Okay, so page 56, where am I? Yes, 56 to 57. All right, so quick review. So we saw last time, right? The way out of suffering for Maimonides, right, is through our reason. Not through God performing miracles and saving us, right? It's through our reason that we can have access to the divine wisdom, divine light, divine inspiration, and then ourselves, right, with this new wisdom that we have received, we get out of the mess we are in, right? So it's very, Maimonides actually very down to earth, right? So, of course, the problem is we all have the vessel, but not all of us have the right. I mean, the vessel for all of us is not equal. Two problems. Anybody remember what are the two problems with our vessels that could impede? Yes, Barbara.
Too crowded and too small.
Yes, too narrow. We talked about that last time. Or too crowded, cluttered with, and we'll see what today, right? So last time we talked about expansion of the vessel, right? How do we expand the vessel? We talked about the connection between faith and reason, right? The issue of idolatry. Those people who have small minds make a small God, right? And therefore end up doing small things, small dangerous things, right? So we're going to talk actually about both today. He's going to talk about how do we purify and expand our vessel. So today last time we talked about the vessel. Today we're going to talk about the steps of purification that we have to go through so we can become vessels for the divine light. Now what's really extraordinary, and that Maimonides is not saying overtly, is that anybody who purifies the vessel, whether you're Jewish, Muslim, Hindu, Buddhist, whatever, if you purify the vessel, the divine light will pour in, right? It will attract the divine light. So you don't even have to believe in God, right? You don't even have to be a Jew. You don't have to be a Muslim. If you purify, if your vessel is pure, it will flow in, right? The divine light is always looking for vessels, right? It's floating around, always looking for containers. There's not many, But when it finds one, doesn't care what the creed is, just flows in, right? So this is good news for all of us, right? We don't have to be part of the Jewish community of Maimonides to experience this, right? So all we have to do is cleanse the vessel, and the divine light will automatically pour in. This is excellent news for all of us, right? And we should be really excited about learning how to purify the vessel. And you will see that it is easier said than done, right? It's pretty simple, the guidelines, but when you dig a little bit, you're like, whoa, I don't know if I can do that. And the first one is the hardest. So let's look at the first one. So there's a list of 4 here on page 57, and then I'm adding a last one, which is the moral component, right? So what is the first one? Second paragraph, right? I'm reading. So he begins by talking about how metaphysics is so hard to study. Everybody's getting confused, right? And the reason is everybody has a cluttered mind, so of course, they're confused. So he says there's such, are you there? Second paragraph, 57, everybody with me? Okay. Such matters to which this kind of confusion applies are very common in metaphysics. So he's saying, yeah, so many cluttered and narrow minds are studying metaphysics that we have now confusion, right? We don't know who is saying the right thing. There's less in natural science. They don't exist in mathematical sciences. And he says this, according to Alexander of Aphrodisias, the causes of differences of opinion are 3. So we have 3. Maimonides adds a 4th one, and then we study a 5th one. So what is the first obstacle in our vessel? What do you see here in the text? Yes?
Power-hungry people.
Okay, very good, right? He says this, the lust for authority and power. So let's stop a little bit and see how this applies to us, right? I'm going to go further than just power-hungry people, because most of us, we will never get the kind of power that some people could aspire to in the Middle Ages, right? So we need to take it more personally. What does it mean to want to have power over the spiritual journey, right? Let's look at it like that. Yes?
If we want to have power over the spiritual journey, that means we can't give ourselves over to the power which we're trying to find. So you can't control it and surrender to it at the same time.
Excellent.
So if you're power hungry, you're going to end up in the spot where you can't progress any further, mostly because of your own selfishness, where you can't surrender yourself.
Okay, excellent. You're reading my mind today. Okay, very good. Right, that's where I was going. Right. If you want to control the journey, if you want God to fit within your expectations of who God should be, you're never going to get there. There is an act of surrender that has to take place in the spiritual journey. This is the biggest obstacle. This is where most of us fail. And we don't even go further to the next purifications. If you can overcome this one, is the hardest. This is the one we cannot do. Because here we are, we expect God to appear like this, to be like this. And most of us are already stuck because of our expectations. How many essays I read, right, throughout the years of people who told me, this happened, and I was asking myself, how could God do this, right? And then I gave up, right? This asking, how could God do this, is already, you had an expectation how God should act. And now you're like, you are not fitting with my expectations. We're done here, right? So we block ourselves, right? When we expect God to act a certain way. Job expected God to act a certain way, and God destroyed that, right? So already we see in the book of Job that Job himself, his expectations needed to be destroyed before he could have a true vision of who God is. And very often is the case for us. We are stumbling on the way that God is not fitting our expectations who God should be. And this is what is blocking us. Yeah, God did this. I'm done, right? Why? You know, you don't want to explore a little bit what's going on, right? Read between the lines, right? Get to where Job got, right? We get stuck, right? Because we expect the journey to take place within this community and God to act like this way, and we are not open to where the journey might lead, right? And very often, because we are incapable of, like Epstein was saying very nicely, surrender, following, letting ourselves be guided to places we are not necessarily comfortable in, right? Guided to visions of God that are sometimes frightening, right? We miss out on where Job ended up, right? Most of us, we get stuck at the shore, right, at the prologue, to go back to Job. We get stuck in the prologue, and we don't have the nerve to really go through the experience and let our expectations be shattered, right? Does that make sense for the first point? Any questions on this one? This is the hardest. Why? Because most of us will never relinquish control, right? This is, as a human being, this is the thing that we will never do, is relinquish control to something else beyond ourselves. And yet it is the only way that we can progress and go beyond ourselves, is to risk to take this strange and convoluted journey away from the familiar and our expectations, right? Okay, so that's for us, right? Of course, you have powerful men who want authority, but we also want authority over our little lives, right? Okay, very good. So, second one. What's the second one? Read in the text on page 57. Okay, let's stop there. Subtlety and profundity of the subject. Subtle meaning nothing is as it seems. Profound, same thing. The surface is not the truth. Again, it's another way to say things are not as they seem. Now, tell me a little bit how our spiritual journey can be blocked by a lack of subtlety, by being unable to see, to read between the lines of a situation, or to read between the lines of an event, right? And we get stuck in the surface level of life. How do we get stuck in the surface and miss the depth in the spiritual journey? See? Sorry? Okay, absolutely, right? When we tend to see spiritual journey as simply happiness, right? Which is how the United States frames it in the US, right? Everything has to be happiness, prosperity, money, right? So even religion now is about making money. Right? We see faith as being simply there to give us happiness. And when something crashes in our lives, are we able to read between the lines, usually? When crisis hits? No, right? We see the crisis, and we're like children. Oh, this is so bad, right? We are not sophisticated. It's unbelievable how unsophisticated we are when faced with life's crisis, right? We are faced with a crisis, and we read it literally. Ah, this is horrible, what is happening to me, right? We cannot, like Job, right? We haven't learned to read between the lines why this is happening, what can I learn from it, what is really going on in my spiritual growth. Am I growing while I'm shrinking over here? Am I growing over here? Do you see what I mean? We are not subtle when we interpret life's pain, life's suffering, life's challenges. We are not subtle. We are very primitive, right? Ooh, this is bad, it hurts. And we go crying somewhere, like children, right? If we were more subtle and profound, we would be able to read between the lines what is really happening, right? And even Job, after a while, was able to see, right, beyond the suffering, what God was shaping him into. And we were able to read the text in that way too, right, to read beyond. So it is an invitation, I think, to not just read the scripture with subtlety, but to read the events in our lives with subtlety, right? I think you should write this down. This is good. Right? Let us not just read the scriptures with subtlety, meaning learning to read between the lines like we did with the book of Job, right? We went very deep. Also, we need to learn to read the events and the situations of our lives with subtlety. This is happening to me. It feels painful, but what is really happening, right? What is really happening on a spiritual level right now? And am I able to see it? I have this theory. I made it up, but I think it works. I have this theory that the laws of the metaphysical world are inversely proportional to the laws of the physical world. In other words, what is bad in the physical realm is good in the metaphysical realm. What is good in the physical realm is bad in the metaphysical realm. What do I mean by this? What do I mean when I say what is bad in the physical realm, actually good in the metaphysical? What am I saying, Epstein?
Money, wealth, power, fame. The basis of what we constitute as a good, happy, comfortable life is not important at all in the metaphysical world.
Exactly.
Rather, in the metaphysical world, they rather you be humble, righteous, and a giving person, rather than what we think is a good thing, to be rich and famous and happy, it's not always important.
Right, absolutely, right? The more comfortable you are in this world, the less you are progressing metaphysically, right? The less comfortable you are in this world, the more you are progressing. This is the idea, right? To be subtle, to see what's happening behind the scenes of your life, right? On the stage, you're suffering. But what is happening in the backstage, right? What is happening to you metaphysically as you're going through this physical ordeal, right? This is how to be subtle in your life, right? Yes, see.
But if you operate under the mindset that any pain that you experience is going to help you grow, then wouldn't that make you not grow then?
What do you mean?
Because you're like, you're basically operating thinking that, oh, this is going to help me grow, so I shouldn't feel pain from this. So what happens in that case?
So to grow from the pain, you have to feel it. This is the problem with us. Pain hits, and we do everything to repress it, right? Who didn't do this? You went through a breakup, and immediately you got back on a dating site. Anybody? Right?
People use dating sites?
I don't know, whatever, apps. I'm 20 years older than you. So for me, it was dating sites, but apps, right? Tinder, yes. How many of you, right, you go through a bad time and you're gonna just get drunk, right, for the rest of your semester, right? We escape the suffering, and so we do not grow. Does that make sense, Peralta?
I guess others do. I just watch a YouTube video, then I'm back to square one.
Excuse me, what?
I just watch a YouTube video, then I laugh and get over.
And then
it.
you're better, right?
Yeah.
Okay, good. So you heal very quickly, and I'm proud of you. That's good. Yes.
Oh, like a shell.
Yeah, so in other words, you're asking how do we suffer, right? So that we can grow, right? Right. And you're right, we create a shell, right? We try to avoid it.
Is
But
that bad or good though?
so what Maimonides is suggesting is that in a way to grow from the suffering, you have to actually first embrace it and let it hit you, right? You have to allow the pain to do its work, right? We are so, I don't know why, but we are so scared of pain, right?
But-
Physical and psychic,
But
right?
Isn't it a natural reaction to be
It
scared?
is, it is.
Every animal doesn't want to get hurt.
Absolutely, absolutely. But we know that pain, even physical, is an indication that you need to take care of it, that something is wrong. If we touch fire and we don't feel pain, we will get destroyed, right? So pain has a use. And if we refuse to feel the pain, we will burn, right? So the pain is always an indication here, go deeper, explore deeper, take the time to process the pain, take the time to learn from it. And there's two reactions. Either we try to forget it, or we start blaming. Yeah, he was such a, deadbeat, boyfriend anyways, right? Or she was such a bitch, right? And this is why I'm suffering, and they did this to me, and my parents, and then my grandparents, and generational curses, right? And instead of really looking deep, okay, what was my part, right? What was my role in this fiasco, right? This is how you grow. You embrace the pain. You receive what is being given to you. We'll talk about this with Rumi more. And then you begin to think, okay, what was my place? What was my role? And that's how you actually, right? But I'm not even talking about that. I'm talking about being subtle, reading your pain as something positive, right? Which is, then you were asking more practical, right? Question, how, right? Okay, does that make sense, Peralta? And Amoroso, okay. So I'm running out of battery, which is very joyful news. Good. Where? Ooh, you're brilliant. I didn't see that. I did not see that.
Wait, wasn't that first thing you said? Don't use the chargers?
Did I say that? No.
I thought you did.
I said don't use your phones or something, probably to that effect. I mean, I don't know what I said. Thank you, though. When the time comes, I will charge. Actually, I can do it right now so I can relax. So the camera is going to look really bad, guys. Sorry. And I'm going to charge. Thank you, Peralta. Really appreciate it. All right, guys. Sorry, bad picture. Okay, back to Maimonides. All right, third one. What is the third? So you see how this one is difficult also, right? Not so difficult as the first one, but you still have to have certain amount of creativity, imagination to read between the lines of your life, right? Just like we read between the lines of Job's, right, ordeal, we have to learn to read between the lines in our own ordeals, right? And be subtle and profound. Ahmed, I'm so sorry. You had your hand up forever. Go ahead. Speak to me.
I wanted to say the third thing. That's what
Please go ahead, Ahmed.
I was going to say the ignorance of the apprehender.
Okay, very good. Third, ignorance. Now, some of you also were like disappointed with Maimonides on that one, right? It was like, well, what, so if a person is ignorant, is it their fault? Like, does he have to be so strict, and rigid with regards to ignorant people? Is it their fault if, they're peasants or I don't know what, artisans and they don't have time? Right, so we have to understand what Maimonides means by ignorant, right? He doesn't mean by ignorant the lay people who have no time, who have a day job. Ignorance for Maimonides is intellectual laziness, okay? Ignorance is intellectual laziness. In other words, the ignorant are people who become complacent in the knowledge they already have. Now, there are two ways to do this. There are two extremes. Two extreme ways to become complacent in the knowledge that you already have. And there are two extreme people who are doing that. So what's the first obvious one? People who are complacent in the knowledge they have, they don't want to go deeper. They're like, this is the truth. I believe this. End of story. This is what I was taught. This is what I believe. That's it. Yes, Mamoros. Exactly. First type of ignorance, right? Dogmatists, I call them, right? They have a dogma, they have a creed, they believe this. They're now moving beyond, no questions, blind faith. This is the type Maimonides has allergy to, right? So that's the first one, the dogmatic mindset, right? Dogmatic mindset, I was taught these beliefs. This is what I've always believed. I'm not ready to go further. I'm not ready to be challenged. Now, the opposite mindset can also become lazy or ignorant, which is?
Denial?
Exactly. The skeptical mindset can fall into that too. Now, we tend to, Maimonides is the first one to enjoy the skeptical mindset because the skeptical mindset loves to ask questions. He's not ready to take anything for granted. But what is the pitfall that the skeptical mindset can fall into and become complacent in? Yes?
Not willing to accept anything.
Exactly. He becomes comfortable not in answers, but in the question. I'm not going to believe anything. There is no truth, right? I'm just going to dwell in the question. I'm not even going to look beyond for an answer because there are no answers. This idea that there are no answers, this is a dogma, right? You have created a new dogma. By saying there are no answers, I'm just going to sit in my questions and, criticize everybody and everything because I'm so high and lofty because I am a skeptical mindset, right? So of course, the dogmatic mindset's falling there, but also the skeptical mindset can fall into this kind of comfortable, ignorant, right, laziness, where they become comfortable not knowing anything, and they stop in a way the search, right? They just say, there is no truth. We will never know, right? Nobody knows, right? Truth is relative. These are big dogmas, right? That these people are saying, thinking they're being open, but actually, for Maimonides, still as lazy as the person over there in the church, with complete blind faith. Same category, right? He puts them. So this is also an invitation for us, right? Never become complacent where you are. You always want to be willing to let yourself become uncomfortable. This is a great place in Queens, if you have real conversations and not just tolerant ones, to be challenged. Because we have like 5 different world religions in the classroom right now, right? If you really had amazing conversations where you let that person put you uncomfortable, right? I'm just, this is probably going to be in the Messianic age or, when God returns, when we have these conversations where, a Buddhist is listening to a Jew and thinking, you know what, you're right, you have a point. Or a Hindu listening to a Muslim and is like, yeah, there you're right and there I am wrong, right? This is the perfect place in Queen's College to have those difficult conversations where you challenge each other's faith and beliefs, right? And make yourselves, right, go further. College it should be the time where you are the most uncomfortable spiritually and metaphysically because your friends are putting you into question and showing you perhaps a better path, right? Which is not the path of your ancestors, right? So this is perfect opportunity, right? To travel, like Maimonides is saying is so important. Okay, what's the last one in this particular text? Yes, see?
Habits.
Yes, habit and education. Let's talk about that. Sorry, Ahmed. You were preceded. Okay, habit and education. So this is very, very typically, this is a typical Hebraic mindset that Maimonides is expressing here. This is the idea of the importance of exile in the spiritual journey, the importance of embracing exile in the spiritual journey, right? All of us come from a certain background. We were born in a community, in a religion, in a tradition that has thousands of years, right? What Maimonides is saying, very often, the way you have been taught can become a prison if you're not willing to move out of that. Now, what he's not saying is leave the religion of your ancestors and never come back. What he's saying, though, is you cannot truly be a Buddhist or a Hindu or a Muslim if you haven't seen something else, right? So the idea is that the spiritual journey, the true spiritual journey, if you really want to connect to your true self and to the true God, you have to have the courage to step out. Even if it's momentarily and you come back later, that's fine. That's what Maimonides did, right? You have to have the courage to step out and see if you can, and do your own journey, not just the journey of your fathers, your journey. I'll give you an example. This is very Hebrew. If you read the Hebrew Bible, this is so typical. Did you ever wonder, well, first of all, let's look at the obvious. First believer, father of Islam, Christianity, and Judaism, who is he? Abraham, right? First thing we see about Abraham, we meet Abraham, he's asked to do something. First day we meet Abraham, he's already doing this. What is he doing? Anybody remember in the Hebrew Bible? I don't know how it is in the Quran, but yes? Okay, first we meet Abraham, Genesis chapter 12, right? God is speaking to him for the first time. First thing he tells him, before you can know me, you have to leave your father's house, your country, your town, and go to the place that I will show you. Just this verse, if you keep it in your head, this is the key, right? If you're capable of leaving behind your country, your town, your father's house, and by the way, you can even be very feminist about it, right? Father's house, patriarchy, right? The ability to leave that in order to find something radically new. This is the essence of the spiritual journey, right? And we see that how is it in the Quran with Abraham? What's the first story? Anybody know? Is that the same thing? Okay, same idea, right? And Islam, by the way, just like Judaism, is very much a faith of exile, right? One of the main, we'll talk about this when we do Rumi, but one of the main tenets of Islam is actually a pilgrimage, which is a sort of exile, right? You leave your home and you travel, right, to an unknown land, which is the pilgrimage to Mecca, which is kind of ritually performed by every Muslim, hopefully once in a lifetime, right? So they're of course cousin religions, so there's a lot of connections, right? So that's the first thing we learned. Now, second thing which I found interesting, which will be helpful to you also. Did you ever wonder why in the Hebrew Bible God is always mentioned like this? The God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob, right? When God introduces himself to new people, that's his business card. I am the God of Abraham, of Isaac, and of Jacob. Right? For those who don't know, Isaac is the son of Abraham, Jacob is the son of Isaac. Why does he not just say, I'm the God of Abraham? Why he doesn't mention these three guys? Yes?
That's where the religions go.
I hadn't thought of that. What do you mean?
Well, isn't it, don't people say that, I forgot which order it is, but Abraham's the son of, oh, I'm sorry, not we're talking about Abraham.
We are. But you're right with Ishmael and Isaac, right?
Yes.
He had two sons and they branched out. But here in the text, he's not talking so much the God of, although that would be interesting, the God of Ishmael and the God of, he's introducing himself to the line of Isaac, right? So he's saying, I'm the God of Abraham, your grandfathers, Isaac, or great-grandfather, Isaac and Jacob. Why does he have to call himself the God of three distinct people, right? Why is he introducing himself like that? Why doesn't he just say, I am God, right? Or I'm the God of Abraham, your forefather. Why you gotta go through these three guys? Yes.
The person's perspective of God.
Exactly. I'm not just the God of Abraham. I'm also the God of Isaac. I'm also the God of Jacob. And I'm also your God. And the way I appear to you, completely different from the way I appear to Epstein and from the way I appear to Peralta, from the way I appear to Isaac and from the way I appear to Abraham. Every experience of God is profoundly individual. If you do not leave the Father's house, you will never know and taste this. You will always be following the God of your father or of your mother, right?
Yes,
So the...
Russia.
Hmm? Okay. So the exile is fundamental, right? In order to find the unique path to God, you have to at one point leave it all behind. Doesn't mean you never come back, right? Maimonides himself came back. He was a rabbi of a community for years, right? But he went through Greek, right, philosophy and so forth. He explored Aristotle, and then he came back stronger, right? So that's the idea here with this last point, right? Okay, any questions before we get into the moral preparation? It's not easy, right? These are not easy steps. But if you take them, this is the promise, right, that Maimonides is saying. If you take these steps, your mind will become a vessel perfectly shaped for the divine light, right? We will start to receive insights, wisdom, clarity, if you're able to take these steps, right? This is an invitation to everyone. Everybody who takes these steps will experience a shift in their mindset and therefore in their circumstances, right? This is what he's saying. Okay, any questions? Zoom? Okay, all right, last one. This is the tricky one. Let's go, it's a different page, page 61. I'm in the last paragraph. So he has another list of purifications, by the way, around that area, which we could have done, but we did the other one. And in that new list of purification, which overlaps, right, you have this new one, so I wanted to add it. The fourth reason lies in the diversity of natural disposition. And then he says this, it is clear and proved by evidence that moral virtues are a prerequisite of intellectual virtues. This is such a powerful quote. Let me say it again. Moral virtues are a prerequisite of intellectual virtues. In other words, you can't be smart if you're not moral. So let's analyze this a little bit. This is very profound. Why is it that you cannot be truly intelligent if you're not moral? What is he saying? How can we interpret this? I know a bunch of you stumbled on that quote, so I know a bunch of you are like, what? Yes, Amoroso.
Is it sort of like because you know better to be a bigger person? Is that sort of
So how does being the bigger person make you a better intellect?
like you're more emotionally mature?
So how does it help to be more emotionally mature, to be a better vessel? I know. It's not obvious. Took me a while to figure it out. Sigh. See, sorry.
I'm like really not sure at this point, but like if you're more emotionally mature, that means you experience more things, you've seen more perspectives.
Ah, you're on the right track. What does it mean to be emotionally mature, see?
I'm not emotionally mature, so
Ahmed, tell us, and then Epstein.
Maybe if you're not morally if you're not moral, so in a way you have hatred towards other religions, or you're not morally, you're saying that someone else is wrong and you are right, you're unable to grow your intellect because you're basically, it goes back to ignorance. You're ignoring.
Ooh, nice, Ahmed. I like it. I'll come back to you. Epstein, you want to add?
I was going to say something similar, but I'm going to change a little bit.
Mm.
If you're not morally grounded, right, if you don't know who your own morals are, if you don't know who you are, right, that's what morals are. What pronounces you as right is wrong, what you perceive as right is wrong. What your morals are is what grounds you as a person. If you're not grounded as a person, then you cannot proceed with thought of mind. Because until you know who you are, you cannot expand into either other opinions or even into further thought if you yourself are an ungrounded person.
Okay, I like that. Good. Let's write the both of them, and then if there's anyone else. So this one is interesting. Morality makes us stronger, right? More grounded. And so therefore we are more able to, we have more, how shall I put it, stability, inner stability to be able to go on this journey. If you're all messed up, right? If you're like a crackhead, right, there's no spiritual journey going to happen, right? You're going to be stuck in your living room, right, counting insects on the ceiling, right? So there has to be a certain amount of stability. I'm so not politically correct. I'm aware of that. This will come back and haunt me in 20 years. It's all on YouTube. It's terrible. I'm totally aware of this. I embrace it. I embrace it. So, yes. So if you're, well, basically, if you're unstable, right, in a certain way, it's very hard to go on an exilic journey, right, because it's going to be even more traumatic. So that would be one way to see it. I want to go over what Ahmed said, because unless there's any others who want to add to this. Okay. So, yes, Goldstein.
I think that a big part of morality is the ability to see beyond oneself and to see things from different perspectives, kind of similar to what you were saying before. And that's also a prerequisite to intellectual virtues. To really, you can't learn things from in a full intellectual manner, stumbling over my words a bit, but if you can't see other perspectives, if you're only stuck in in one specific dogma.
Very nice, very nice. You guys all have a different, as a class, we have a different definition of morality than Maimonides, but it works, right? I mean, we have to, what's the word, contextualize, right? But very good. Anybody? I'm going to come back to that. Mahmoud. Okay.
So I say that here he's saying that you need morals in order to interpret.
Excellent, right? You guys are all resonating on the same frequency. Maimonides, of course, means something else, but I'm going to go on with what you guys are saying. Maimonides, just to not, betray Maimonides, he's talking about if we are too passionate or too impulsive, right? If we don't have control over our passions, we are not going to be able to read the text correctly, because we will be led by our passions. So it's similar. Let's take the passion of hatred. This is the one you guys, most of you cited. If you're a hateful person and you read the scripture, what are you going to see there? A license to kill, right? And it's there, right? There's many, many licenses to kill in the scriptures, right? So you're going to see that, right? And you're going to capitalize on that. So another way to put it is hatred is a narrowness of the mind, which is what most of you are saying, right? Hatred is a narrowness of the mind. It's an inability to, what you're saying, empathize, inability to see the other person where they're at, to walk in their shoes, to see why they're like this, right? So hatred, in a way, is a narrowness. And remember, what happens when your mind is narrow? What do you see? What sin, what mortal sin are you committing when your mind is narrow? We did that last time. Idolatry, right? So hatred is a narrowing of the mind, but love and compassion is an expansion of the mind, right? Anytime you love, you see more. You will see that there's a classic example, which many people make fun of, but I think it's very serious. When you love someone, you see potential there that other people don't see. Why? Because you love and they don't, right? Love, in a way, if another example, if you love a subject in school, you're going to be amazing at it, right? Because love expands your mind, right? Love has the capacity to expand your intelligence. And so if you're filled with love and you come to the text, you come with a big mind. If you're filled with hatred and you come to the text, boom, right? So this is why I think you guys' interpretation, I like it even better than what Maimonides was saying, or the way he interpreted this notion of morality, because actually fits very well, is very true. If you don't have the moral disposition to not hate, you will do all kinds of reckless interpretations, right? You are going to come to the scripture with a narrow mind, and you will be an idolater who begins to do dangerous things in the name of God, right? So that's the idea here. I hope I have answered the question. A bunch of you were struggling. Does that answer your question? People who were, I don't know who, I forgot who you were. Right. So absolutely, right? So that's the idea. It's interesting, just a quick anecdote. There was a very famous cellist, somebody who plays the cello, from Spain called Pablo Casals. Anybody know him? Okay, so very famous in the 20th century. And so he was asked one day by a journalist, right, how do you become a good musician? What kind of advice do you have, right, for people who want to become a good musician? And he answered this. He said, all you need, become a good person, and then you will become a good musician, right? So this is very similar, right? If you want to become an amazing theologian or an amazing scientist or an amazing mathematician, it's strange, we don't connect the two. Become a good person. If you enter science or metaphysics or mathematics with love, you enter with a large mind. And you will see more than the person next to you who is like this, right? It's very interesting that there is actually a connection between intelligence and love, right? The more you love, the more your intelligence expands. The more you hate, the smaller your intelligence, right? Okay, awesome. Any other comments before we conclude? Good. All right, so we have finished our journey with Maimonides. It's so sad. Okay, so quickly, right? Hopefully you have a good grasp now of what he was saying. I don't think there's a test yet, right? No, Rumi's next. So here's your work. I'm going to type it up, of course, but for next week, you have a little bit more work. You have to listen to the introduction to Rumi on our playlist, do the audio question. Please do it by listening to the whole recording, right? Then you have the reading, which is not too long, and then the reading assignment, and then you're all set for next week. Okay? All right, I'm going to stop the recording.